come from different histories, right? We all come from different past backgrounds and things that make us who we are. And not everyone is in the training and nutrition and as that a part of their life. But there's been times I think well, all of us have been tested both mentally and physically and kind of pushed to our limits to the furthest that we could go before we feel like we somewhat run out of gas. Well, if you ever think, what causes that? What causes that? What causes you to go to that full length on whatever it is that you may be doing that where you feel like you're running out of gas, right? And in a lot of cases, it has to do with a neurological shift. Just like with any hardcore training, if you're getting ready for a marathon run with bodybuilding and fitness, what I'm most familiar with, if you're getting ready for a prep, a 6 month long prep, it gets to a point to where you're deep in, you're thinking, man, am I mentally off? Like, what's going on? So it's not a lack of discipline, right? This is my interpretation. It's not a lack of discipline, not a lack of weakness. It's what they call a neurological shift. So your brain is shifting and it's happening inside of your head. It's not just a physical transformation, right? A lot of people, they say, "Oh, be with me for my fitness journey, my physical transformation." That's a very small portion of the equation. It's really a mental reallocation. You got two different sides of the brain that are contesting and fighting each other. And it's the control of the two brain systems that we'll talk more about here in a minute that are playing tug of war with each other. And that is what's causing the difference in reallocation and the struggle to keep your mind sound. So we all basically operate with two different sides of our brains. The thought process is that each side of our brain is operating by itself, but really it doesn't work that way, right? It's like the same thought process that, you know, your left arm operates all by itself. Well, it's connected to the rest of your body. I think a lot of us forget that, right? We may have shoulder pain and think that it's only shoulder pain, but really, it could generate from our back, it could generate from our elbow, so a lot of times we forget that we're one big system. So those two different hemispheres of your brain that operate, one is called the neocortex. Neocortex has to do with like logical planning, discipline, restraint, a human element, lying, the things that cause us to be human, the things that cause us to do the things naturally that humans do. It's really what gives us the advantage, and a lot of the emotion is shown on our face with that one. The limbic system is the one that is the archaic system that's been with us for ages. It's been with us for a very long time. That's emotion, hunger, fear, reward, survival, right? The one that was fighting felines back in, 10,000 BC. That's the limbic system. And a lot of times that system has become really unchanged compared to how it was before. So where we were reacting years ago to, an animal of some type trying to chase us and attack us, now we're reacting to being late on a report that we have to turn in for work. So the emotional response and the body's response is the same. So in normal life, it balances between the two, right? But in prep, so if you're doing any type of prep or any type of extreme, conditioning, it's the tug of war between the both of those different hemispheres. Those different parts of your brain. So prep focus primarily on extreme neocortex dominance. So that neocortex, you are choosing to do everything that you're doing through any type of prep or any type of dieting or conditioning or training, right? And some of those are included in the following: eating on schedule without an appetite, regardless of appetite. If you're hungry, if you're not hungry, eating on schedule. Training on fatigue, you're tired, you got a schedule you have to hit, so you're still training. Following rules regardless of emotion. It doesn't matter. You've got a certain context that you're a coach or that yourself, if you self-coach, that you've put together. And that really hits on self-control, long-term planning, and delayed gratification. You know that you're not going to get anything that feels good right now, right? If you're putting your body through all of this, all of it's coming as it's hitting you. And so you're not going to get any gratification right now. And you're really in delayed gratification mode 24/7. But the question is, right, what does that cost? What's the cost? Sacrificing a few things. The neocortex being energy expensive, it's going to sacrifice your sleep. You're going to sacrifice stress. You're going to get a lot of black and white thinking, just cut and dry, less emotion, which can sometimes not necessarily be a bad thing. Reduce patience, less creativity. You're a little less fun to be with, and then narrow focus. So those things you end up hitting, right? That is what you're putting on the table when you're choosing to use that neocortex portion of your brain for prep. That's why a lot of times the athletes during preparation or if they're getting ready for something, they may come off rigid because they're using that part of their brain to prioritize preparation, to prioritize their meals, and that really is in the forefront and it takes precedence. It's a relatively normal thing to do for anybody that's preparing for any type of an event, but it will take a lot out of and that is part of only the neocortex doing its work. Now, for the other side, the survival brain. So while your logical brain is trying to maintain order and do what you're telling it to do, the survival brain is just trying to keep things aligned and keep you alive, right? So, and some things are causing other things, right? So your hunger hormones rise, those increase. Calorie deficit that you're having is trigger all kinds of survival alarms, right? And then your dopamine sensitivity drops, right? Your brain doesn't know that you're dieting to condition yourself on stage. It just wants to keep itself alive. So that's really conditioning difference between the two. So there's a threat signal almost. It's like your body's going through something that it considers to be traumatic. So it's automatically kicking in heightened irritability, right? Some emotional flattening. You're getting some anxiety, that sort of thing, loss of joy because your body knows that something is going awry. It's not going the way it wants. So the normal rise of dopamine that you get a little less of that because, your body is using whatever resources it has left to continue the battle, right? So you end up with a tug of war kind of between the two, right? You get rigid discipline on the neocortex side, and then you get heightened emotion on the limbic side, the limbic portion of your brain. The long-term goal is what you're thinking about on the neocortex, but then immediate survival, you just want to survive on the other side of the brain. And then you get mental fatigue, which naturally is on the logical side. Emotional, just vitality. You're very volatile when it comes to it's all normal. Stressors that sometimes can't feel normal, but it is part of it, right? So you have to be very careful. I've always said that I think the balance on being able to keep both of them in control and keep both of them the way that you want them to be is not only to think of the end game, but to absorb yourself into the process and set micro goals. So if you know that the only workout that you know for sure that you can get done and you'll do well with is the one that's right in front of you, set a goal to accomplish that workout, that training. Set a goal every single rep that you have to complete that. Set a goal to get through that method of training the way that you are in a successful way. You want to set your goals lofty, but then in the same hand, set them to where you can see them right in front of you. So the other thought process is what do you do, right? What do you do after you've accomplished and you've finished and you're on the other side of post prep? So post prep, a lot of things happen. Your dopamine rebounds, hunger explodes. We all have had these uncontrollable binges that sometimes we have. And again, this is post prep for anything that has to do with a extreme sport where it's taking a lot out of you. And then a lot of your emotional range returns, but even that can have spikes and valleys, right? Because your hormones are going all over the place. They go from being at all time low to spiking. So that's not always a good thing. Rebound isn't a weakness. It's not considered a weakness. It's just part of the game. It's really what it is the limbic system, which is your survival brain, reclaiming its ground, right? It's been suppressed for months and months. Because it's been suppressed for that long, it's just trying to regain order, to repair the body for all the seemingly heavy amount of damage that was caused on it. So post-prep chaos isn't a character flaw. It's a neurological correction is really what it is. So it's really just trying to get the body back to normal is the goal. And that's really what it's trying to do. So again, just in summary, making sure that the understanding is, any type of preparation for something that's going to take a lot out of you from an extreme perspective of nutrition, from an extreme perspective of physicality, it's going to temporarily rewire your brain. Whereas you normally, and most people have a routine, us being humans and having a higher level of intelligence, we still do live on instinct, right? When we're hungry, we eat. If we're thirsty, we drink. If we're tired, we sleep. Well, you're hijacking that when you do any type of a extreme sport or extreme preparation to get ready for something. So just keep that in mind, right? The strongest athletes aren't the ones that ignore this. You never want to turn your mind or turn your head to it. The strongest athletes are the ones who plan for it, they expect it, and they lean into it. Kind of like what I said earlier, is you live through the process and you endear yourself with the process. And that really is what is going to get you ahead of the game, because you will have utmost confidence that this is what's supposed to happen. I've always used to say a phrase of have a conversation with discomfort. If something is uncomfortable and it's supposed to be uncomfortable, it's 10 times easier to just lean into it and realize, okay, I am uncomfortable and I'm supposed to be, because this isn't supposed to be fun. At that point, that it's something that's expected, and you're not caught off guard. Discipline isn't about just about control, right? It's about knowing that everything has a cost. The control has a cost, and what does it take to recover for it? Okay. So if you're getting ready for something right now, and it's anything, right? I just want to reiterate that not only talking to those individuals that are getting prepared for a bodybuilding competition, or those individuals that are getting prepared for, some type of a marathon run, you could be buckling down for a dieting that you've never done, right? This could be your very first time in the gym, in the beginning of the year, and you're setting some goals for yourself. The importance is give yourself context, not criticism. Making sure that you understand about yourself what your limits are, but in the same hand, that in order to achieve your goal, you'll have to push those limits. You'll have to hijack that Neo Cortex portion of your brain and utilize that to show leverage over that limbic system that your body is going to do when it comes to craving everything that the body knows that it needs. Normalize the experience, right? Normalize it. Realize that it's supposed to happen. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable. And if you're at the end of all this and you're coming on the backside, it's really important to record. I don't think that athletes record and keep track of progress and how they're doing enough. In some cases, you may, knock something out of the park, and you look back and you say, man, how did I accomplish that? And if you can't soundly answer that, then that's no good, right? It may have been a roll of the dice, a couple of adjustments that you made, but you want to make it as objective as possible to where it's easy to repeat that. So making sure that you record as you go. I know your brain isn't functioning the way that it should due to that limbic system taking a hit, and adrenaline kicking in, and cortisol, but that's part of the game, and you'll get yourself to a better place.